Hello, dear colleagues. Today, my colleague Anastasia
Hello.
and I will represent to you our topic of stickleback and trophic chains in the White Sea. Stickleback spends most of its life in the open waters. During spawning, it moves to the coastal area where adults spend a month or two and juveniles the first few weeks of their life. Thus, stickleback is included in coastal communities, being food for predators and eating plankton and benthos. Today, we will step by step discuss trophic connection of stickleback from the higher trophic level to the lower trophic level, while they are staying in the coastal areas. The first step is predatory fish that feed on stickleback on these different life stages. Besides predatory fish, adult stickleback also eat their own eggs and juveniles. Furthermore, adult sticklebacks consume a lot of benthic and planktonic organisms, as well as stickleback juveniles. The research was conducted in the vicinity of the Education and Research Station Belomorskaya in the Kandalaksha Bay in the White Sea. Predatory fish sampling sites are shown by the red markers in the map. Stickleback fish sampling sites by green markers. Okay, let's start from the piscivorous fish. Anastasia, please.
Anya, thank you. At first, we assessed the role of stickleback in predatory fish feeding during the fluctuations of its population in the White Sea. We analyzed the literature data and compared with our current results. During the period of high abundance, the first half of the 20th century, stickleback occupied a significant part of the fish diet. And during the period of decreasing the numbers from the 60s to the 90s, these fish consumed other prey, other fish species, mollusks, polychaetes, and others. Later, by the 2000s, the number of sticklebacks in the White Sea began to recover and now has almost reached the maximum values observed in the 30s. And the stickleback again became the dominant prey for many predators in the summer. Now let's talk about each of the species in detail. The studied fish can be divided into three groups. The European and foghorn sculpins actively eat the adult stickleback, as they are ambush and large-mouthed predators with bottom lifestyle. Nevaga, smelt, and herring have small mouth but can chase a small prey in the water, so juvenile stickleback is a key food of this species. The Atlantic cod has all of the necessary adaptations for feeding on stickleback eggs, adults, and juveniles. They are body shape and large size, the ability to feed on bottom food, and swim quickly in the water column. The first group is sculpins feeding on adult stickleback. Adult three-spine stickleback, it's the blue sector on the slide, in June-July is the dominant food for the European sculpin. In the area of high stickleback abundance, the left diagram, its percentage in the predator's diet is the highest. In the second half of the summer, when stickleback moves away from the shore, the adult stickleback almost disappears from the stomach content of the sculpin. It eats small quantities of stickleback juveniles, but mainly sand eels and benthic invertebrates such as amphipods, euphausiids, polychaetes. There is a positive correlation between the body lengths of the sculpin and the adult stickleback eaten by it. The foghorn sculpin, as well as the European one, feeds on adults of stickleback in the first half of summer. And its percentage in the food spectrum of the predator is higher in the area of higher stickleback abundance. But we see that in August, the percentage of adult stickleback is higher in the foghorn sculpin spectrum, since it can chase and catch it in the water. But the European sculpin is a more sedentary predator that remains in the coastal areas. The second group of fish that are feeding on juvenile stickleback, it's Nevaga, smelt, and herring. While juveniles of stickleback are present in mass in the coastal area, Nevaga actively feeds on them from July to August. It's a green sector on the slide. Besides, nevaga selectively eat larger juveniles from the sea. The rest of the time, nevaga feeds on benthic invertebrates, mainly polychaetes and amphipods, and other fish species. In areas with a lower abundance, stickleback is insignificant in the diet of nevaga, which uses another available food. Smelt, as well as nevaga, feeds on stickleback juveniles while they are widely present in shore. It's the early August. And there is positive correlation between the body length of the smelt and the juvenile stickleback. Moreover, in July, in areas with high abundance of stickleback, juveniles dominate the food spectrum of herring. And it is interesting to note that herring, unlike nevaga, selectively eat smaller juveniles of stickleback. In the area of low abundance, it is absent in the diet of herring. Herring, unlike most of the fish studied, is not an obligate predator. We assume that this herring feeding behavior, eating stickleback juveniles, is a way of fighting a competitor, as herring and stickleback are on the one trophic level and can compete for food resources. Since, for example, for the Baltic Sea, it has been shown that the three-spined stickleback actively feeds on Atlantic herring eggs during its spawning period. And the authors attribute this to interspecific competition. In the White Sea, stickleback also feeds on eggs and herring larvae. At the same time, it is very likely that herring just uses the abundant food resource. And the last one is Atlantic cod that feeding on eggs, adults, and juveniles of stickleback with dominating of eggs. During the summer season, the percentage of these foods in the cod stomach significantly decreases, and the cod switches to feeding on other fish, mainly the sand eel and benthic invertebrates. In the area of low abundance of stickleback, the percentage of feeds in the diet of cod is significantly lower. The low density of stickleback nests is partially offset by adults in the food spectrum of cod. It was shown that cod, like nevaga, eats larger juveniles from the sea, but there is no correlation between size of cod and stickleback. As fish grow, the percentage of juveniles as well as invertebrates decreases, and the percentage of adult stickleback and other fish in the diet increases. Selective feeding of larger cod specimen on stickleback eggs was observed. Perhaps the larger cod learns with age to find more nutritious and energetically attractive eggs hidden in aquatic vegetation. Finally, to assess the role of stickleback in fish diet during summer, it is necessary to estimate its percentage in fish production. In the area of high stickleback abundance, it accounts for up to 85% of the summer consumption of the European sculpin, mainly due to adult stickleback. It's shown on the left diagram, and in females, it is less than in males. About 30% in nevaga due to juveniles, and about 60% in cod due to eggs and adult sticklebacks, the right diagram. In the area of low stickleback abundance, it makes up a much smaller proportion in the summer consumption of cod and nevaga, and the fourth sculpin has 38% due to the adult stickleback. At the beginning of our study of trophic connections of stickleback, we also studied the diet of flatfishes to find out if they feed on stickleback eggs. However, the food spectrum of flatfishes were dominated by polychaetes, and other benthic forms were also present. Three-spined stickleback was absent. Therefore, flatfishes were excluded from our research on the role of stickleback in the feeding of fish of a high trophic level.
For sticklebacks, they exactly consume a lot of their own eggs and juveniles. Nowadays, we have much information about their feeding in inshore areas and in summer period. Eggs make up to 80 of stickleback stomach contents in June, blue color in this histogram. It is interesting that the most common development stages in the eggs embryogenesis, which we can see in stomach, are unfertilized eggs and eggs in the first development stages. Besides egg stickleback, diet includes such benthic organisms like polychaetes, pupae and larvae of chironomids, and amphipods. Food spectra of males and females were almost the same in the ratio of main prey items. Coastal waters, of course, are a very important part of stickleback life, but it's just a small part. Stickleback spends most of their life in open waters. On the slide, you can see three food spectra of fish in offshore areas near spawning grounds. It is three different stages in early June. In this time, the diet of fish included only pelagic organisms, with dominance of Calanus glacialis, up to 85% of stomach contents in some periods. Also, we can see Ephosioidovaria and Pseudocalanus species. You can observe that the share of Calanus glacialis in stomach contents is decreasing during the period when stickleback are staying in offshore area, choosing the inshore area for their nests. In opposite, we can see how the number of prey items is increasing and benthic organisms are appearing in the diet. Spawning period lasts during all June, and in the end of the month, some fish already have gone away from the coastal areas. On the slide, you can see the fish diet composition in the offshore areas near spawning grounds, but after spawning in the end of June. Diet of fish included 17 prey items, but the most important of them you can see on the slide. If we divide the total food spectrum on males and females, we can see that the main components of feeding of females are pelagic eggs of flatfishes, and in males are coastal eggs of sticklebacks. In addition, you can see diet of females is more planktonic than of the males. At the next step of the investigation, we can see that each individuals on the fish head in stomachs. On this graph you can see how various the diet can be in this time. Some fishes have been in this area for some time because in their diet there are many planktonic prey items. The other fishes have come to this area recently because in their diet there are many benthic prey items which live in coastal area. The last station is the most open water station in our study. You can see this location in the map. It's a yellow marker. Diet of fish in this station included only 11 taxa. The most important food component in study area was Podon leucarty. The share was about 80%. Diets of males and females did not have any differences, as well as the diet of all the fish individuals. It can tell us that all the fish were locating together for some time. What about stickleback juveniles that stay in coastal zones? After hatching, stickleback juveniles live in the spawning area for several weeks before going to the open waters. We took samples during July up to September. We can see the diet of juveniles of different sizes included benthic and planktonic taxa, belonging to Copypoda, Cladocera, Artocladina, Gamarida, and so on. The most important of them you can see on the slide. The following planktonic and benthic forms dominated in stomach contents. It's two species of copypods, it's Temora and Microcetella, one Celeophora, Helicostomella, and two benthic organisms, oligochaetes and artocladians. Together, all these five prey items make up more than 80% of the biomass in the stomach contents and appear in more than 95% of stomachs. The percentage of juvenile from different size group in the samples changed in time. We selected three groups of juveniles for investigation of their diets, which depends on their size. The contribution of Temora, Microcetella, and Artocladina to the juvenile's diet significantly increased with the juvenile size. In opposite, the share of oligochaetes and Celeophora helicostomella decreased with a juvenile size. Feeding in the most investigated station was characterized by the high proportion of the planktonic crustacean Temora. And also you can see a lot of arthocladines. The exception was the station 6. You can see the green color in the histogram. In the station, there were another planktonic crustacean, Acartilangeremus, and in the food spectrum, their share was about 80%. In addition, in some stations, fish feed planktonic crustacean Podon. Leucarti, they share up to 60% in the diet. In general, what we can see, stickleback juveniles can be characterized as planktonivorous fish. Since plankton dominated in stomach, not only in terms of the proportion in the abundance, but also in terms of the proportion in the total biomass of prey items. Benthic organisms made a significant contribution to the diet only at some stations and irregularly. Okay, that's all about stickleback. What about conclusion, Anastasia?
So, in conclusion, I think we should say that stickleback is obviously a key component of the ecosystem as a connecting link between different trophic levels and offshore and inshore areas. Adults, juveniles, and eggs of the three-spined stickleback are prey items of various coastal fish. Seasonal dynamics of the three-spined stickleback population, as well as its spatial distribution, determine its role in fish feeding. Adults dominate the diet of the sculpin, accounting for 38 to 85% of the summer consumption. Juveniles are an important food item of Nevaga, herring, and smelt. They make up to 30% of the summer consumption of Nevaga. Eggs and adults of stickleback are the main components of the cod diet, which also feeds on juveniles. Together, they make up about 60% of the summer consumption, and in the area of low abundance, this value is lower too. Sticklebacks may drastically change their feeding behavior, establishing multiple trophic links with the high variety of organisms living in offshore and inshore areas. The easy shift from one prey to another show high plasticity in stickleback feeding behavior, which may suggest that stickleback should thrive as long as potential key prey communities are abundant, regardless of their composition. Our research was funded by the Russian Science Foundation and the Russian Foundation for Basic Research. Thank you for your attention, and we are waiting for your questions after all the session.
Okay, thank you so much.